Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. In the previous video, we created a virtual machine and installed the Windows 2012 operating system. In this video, I'm going to be promoting that Windows operating system to a domain server or a domain controller. So go to your VMware Workstation application and double click it. And that will open our window here. A couple of things to note here. As you'll notice here, the VM is not starting, and that's because it's powered off. In order to power it on and turn the virtual machine on, you have to go here and click power on this virtual machine. If you want to edit the virtual machine, it must be powered off. And if you look at the properties of editing these things, these are the options you can edit. If you wanted to allocate more memory, you can do that here while the virtual machine is powered off, or if you wanted to add another network adapter and so on. But for our purposes, we're fine. So now I'm going to power this virtual machine on. Basically, it's just turning on the virtual machine. And what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to go to full mode, so you get the benefit of full screen. And remember, this is just an operating system at this point, and what we're going to do is make it what's called a domain controller. And then we will have our domain and our various Active Directories. So this will just take a couple of seconds. One thing you'll notice is I am moving the mouse, which you can't see. So if you want to capture the mouse on your keyboard, press Control-Alt at the same time, and that will release the mouse or the cursor here. So if I click it again. So now it's starting here. So actually I'm going to use the administrator log in. So let me log in there. And there we go. So it'll just take a couple of seconds. Now as you turn on the domain controller, or the operating system I should say, this default application opens, which is the server manager. And this is where we can add roles and features to make this operating system into a domain controller. This automatically opens when you open the operating system, and you can disable it. And actually, I'm going to just click on this. And again, if you want to open it, this is the icon here that opens the server manager. So click on the server manager and we'll get to the front service manager pane. So now if you want to promote this operating system into a domain controller, you go to Add Roles and Features and click. This window will open and go Next. It's a role-based or feature-based installation, so go Next. It's going to select the server that you want to promote, so go Next. And this is where we select the role, and then obviously you have various options that you can select. And the one we're interested in is Active Directory Domain Services. So check that. This features window will pop up, and go Add Features, and then go Next. As you can probably notice that I'm going relatively fast, and I'm not really discussing the Active Directory Domain Services or this application here, because this is not a networking class. This is just to make this server a domain server so that we can install SQL Server in a domain environment. So I may create videos for this again. So in this case, we're going to go install, and it will take about 60 seconds to install these features. It's going to install the Active Directory Domain Services, the Group Policy Management, and these various other services that you can see, and tools. So I'm not going to pause it here because it really doesn't take that long. But when it comes to the actual process of promoting this video to this server to domain control, at that point I'll pause it and come back. So now you can see this features are being installed, and the services and tools and so on. So this again doesn't take that long. So I'm going to just close it, and you'll get the window or the option here, which is as to promote this server, and we're going to do that right now. So we'll just wait a few more seconds here. And obviously while you're doing this and promoting this Windows environment to a directory, you can certainly read this at your leisure. You can read what the various properties are of each window. As I said, I'm not going to be really discussing this. I may make a course on networking in the near future. But right now this is it. But the other thing is to note is that this is relatively self-explanatory here also. I mean, you won't necessarily do anything dissimilar that I'm doing. So now that those features have been installed, we're going to promote this server to a domain controller. So I'll go click and another window will pop up as it is here. And again, I'm not going to go into details of what I'm doing here, but just follow along or just pay attention so we can do it. We're going to add a new forest. Now this is where we create or name a domain. I'm going to create my domain called SQL. I'm going to create .com. So this is our domain, SQL. Go next. Again, I'm not going to discuss what the forest is or all these properties. I'm just going to go through it. Now this will take about 30-40 seconds just to set the operation options here. But however, we obviously, where you can see asterisk, these are mandatory inputs, so we're going to have to create a password. And again, just make sure you remember this password here. So this little bar here, you can see it's still running in the background. And then obviously when I click on this, it'll highlight and then we can enter our password. And as you progress through each wizard window, there may be at times where if there's any issues to be resolved, then you have to resolve those issues first before you can promote it. I've gone through some of the issues that we had, such as the administrator password not conforming to the minimum requirements, so I fixed that. So I'm just going to now type the password and repeat it and go next. This will pop up that DNS is not basically installed, and we're going to install DNS on this same server. In a network environment, you'll have the DNS server on a separate physical box. But again, don't worry about that. So let's just continue. This is the NetBIOS domain name, which automatically populates to SQL. So go next. And again, this will just take a couple of seconds. Again, you can change the log files or the data files, but for our purposes, just go next. And now it's ready to configure the Active Directory domain. So you can look at that if you wish, and again, go next. Now it's going to go through the prerequisites and validation process for the Active Directory. And obviously, as I mentioned, if there's any problems here with a red X, then you must fix it and then rerun this process again. As I said, I've gone through the process, and the only issue that I had was the local domain administrator account. Local account administrator account was not complex, so I made a complex password for that, and that resolved the issue. But in this case, we won't see anything here. It'll just be all these requisites, and you can see that all prerequisites check pass successfully. So now I can install it, and now this will take about 15 or 20 minutes to make it a domain controller. So I'm going to pause this video, and whenever I feel it's necessary for you to see the next screen, I'll pause it and we'll come back there. So I'll just pause this video right now, and we'll take over when this finishes. So I'll see you in a second. And we're back, and the domain services Active Directory was successful, and now it's rebooting the computer. So I'm going to press Control-Alt at the bottom to release the mouse, and I'm going to go to full mode again. And now you'll notice that additional directories of Active Directory directories have been added. Securities have been added to our administrative tool directory. And then now we can see that the Windows operating system now is a domain controller. And I'll show you the verification that this is indeed an SQL domain as soon as it starts. So just give it a few more minutes to restart. And let's look at that. So again, while we're waiting, just understand some of the navigation tools here for your own benefit in navigating through the VM workstation. And again, this is a great tool to learn also, the VM virtualization. I strongly advocate you learn that. Again, I may have videos dedicated to the actual virtualization of multiple operating systems and so on, but that may be another course. But you get the notion and you get the premise that virtualization is a great, in my opinion, a great technology, and it saves a tremendous amount of time and resources in terms of physical resources. Now I can create multiple and many other VMs just like this one, and I can control them right here. But this is our primary domain controller. So the configuration properties are going in the background running, and we'll see in a few minutes once it's done. So let's just be patient here while it configures. And let's just keep waiting. Obviously, if a couple of other things here, note, if I hover over this icon, you'll see it says Control-Alt-Delete to this virtual machine. We've already discussed that. Obviously, if you wanted to go back to this mode, you can. Again, you can see the various properties that this virtual machine has, or VM. You can look at these various tools that we have, snapshots, but we'll be doing it another time. And then again, I encourage you to kind of look at these various tabs and see what properties you can, subcategories you can learn from. So again, this is just taking a little while. Obviously, initially it will take a little while because it is applying all the names. So let's look at this. Let's go to full mode again. Okay, now you'll notice here that because this is a domain, the SQL, which is the domain name, followed by backslash, followed by the username. So this is an indication that you're in a domain environment. Before we had just the keyword administrator as a username, and now that we are part of a domain, as I said, you will get this format as the domain followed by the backslash, followed by the username. Since we're using the administrator, I'm going to go back here and check this. Again, you can see the difference here. So now I'm going to log on. And there we go. So now we are in a domain controller. This is a domain controller. And just give it a second. As I said, the server manager is going to come on. You can see a few things that we may need to fix. So let's close this. I don't really need it at this time. Control. And now if I right-click computer, or open it, double-click it, properties, you'll see that now the domain is SQL right there. So now we have a domain. Another thing you need to look at is if I hover over here, go start, oops. Come on. If I look at the administrative tools, I remember initially I told you that the administrative tools would have added directories, and these you can see are added directories here. You've got the Active Directory Domain and Trusts, Active Directory Administrative Center, Active Directory Sites and Services, and this is one of the common ones you'll be using, Administrative Directory User and Computers. So if I double click that, this will open. Obviously we're in the SQL, and there we go. And now as you can see, these are the users here, the built-in functionalities, the computers associated with it. This is the domain controller. As you can see, this is the computer. So this is how you make a server into a domain controller. And now we can start adding users here. We can add more computers and resources. And the great advantage of this now is that when we install SQL on another virtual machine, that virtual machine is going to join this SQL domain, and then we can control it here, or network admin is going to control it. It's not necessarily something a DBA will do, but certainly a DBA should be aware of this architecture, if you will. Something I'm going to leave here. I don't want to get too complicated or too in-depth in Active Directory utilities. We are going to be discussing a few more things like users and service accounts for SQL in the next video. So I'm going to leave it here, and this is Raphael with how to become a production SQL database administrator.